Hello, Westchester. I am Ryan, the host of the Westchester Informed podcast, and I am here with Paul Nosek, the village manager. And how are you, Paul?
Good, how are you?
Good. So I've got him here today to talk with us. He's been generous enough to spend some time with us to talk a little bit about the state of the village and what goes on, what his job is, what his role is. Paul, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of get off on a tangent a little bit because I want to make sure that I make it clear that, one, I'm not affiliated with the village in any way. I'm independent. I had an idea, and one of the things I should probably point out right away is that I'm new to this in terms of podcasting, so I explained it in the introduction, but a podcast is basically a radio show for the internet, and it's put out through RSS feed or YouTube or however, whatever channels and means that you can put out a podcast. But the other thing to keep in mind is that podcasts are not short. They're intended to be conversations or entertainment that lasts a while. And the average podcast of the top 100 podcasts is 53 minutes. So we're not off here on an hour to an hour and a half. And luckily, these village folks and the people around the village, and I hope that continues, are willing to give us that kind of time to actually have a thoughtful conversation where we can discuss things, go back and forth, and find out what's really going on and what they have to say about it and how we can make changes, and maybe that becomes a tool that we can use together as a village. And it was just an idea I had. So the other thing I have to say on that is that this is not a home rule podcast. This is an idea I had back like probably months ago, 6 months ago, and I apologize for not starting it sooner, because then I would have been able to just have people on, talk to them about who they are, what their role is. And then when home rule came up, you guys would know me already or know them, and there'd be a lot better rapport. But unfortunately, I'm jumping in right when I have to sort of get a chance to talk with them about this issue and find out what we can about it. And so don't get wrapped up in social media. That's one of the reasons I also started this, is because I saw that you can get wrapped up in social media, which is a terrible place to talk about anything. And people have their judgments, people have their comments, and the negative ones I'm trying to use as a means to get better at this, and hopefully I am quickly. But I'm not here to jump on these people right away. I want to build some rapport, but it has to happen quickly, which is actually one of my big gripes with the home rule vote, is that it's fast, and it's probably too fast. But that has nothing to do with my bias one way or the other. So let's turn to you, and let's just that's at least what I had to say at the beginning, just so that people understand. Podcasts are not short, and social media, I'm not gonna be too wrapped up or lost in the comments. If you have something really you want to feedback on, or you want to provide feedback on, I certainly welcome it in the email. If you go onto Facebook to the Westchester Informed page, you can click on email, and you can email me any questions or comments or anything you have to say. So you run the village, so you don't really have quite a dog in the fight in terms of home rule, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So my job, there's different forms of government. We are a managerial form of government where the village hires a manager to run the day-to-day operations with their department heads, and the politicians, the elected officials, they do the legislation part. So we are a managerial form. I am the village manager, so I oversee all of the departments within the village.
Okay. So you're sort of in charge of everything. You got a big job, right?
Yes.
Okay. How'd you come to be? How did you get into this sort of role?
Actually, by accident, as most things happen. I started out as a CPA working for several accounting firms downtown. Started my own practice for 10 years, and then got into the governmental accounting side of things as a director of finance. I did that for about 15 years. And then the last 2 years got into the role of assistant village manager for the village or city of Darien, Illinois. Then I worked for the village of Stickney, and then came here to the village of Westchester as the village manager.
Okay.
So my background is really in finance and accounting, which actually obviously helps.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's got to be a big draw from 4 villages to have somebody like that in that role, right?
Yes.
So it's a combination of managing people and numbers.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, okay.
The numbers are a little easier sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. No, I hear you there for sure. So, how Westchester? Like, how did you come to?
I actually grew up in the Berwyn area. Went to St. Joe's. I was St. Joe's alumni.
Okay.
And when Westchester was looking for help, I saw the advertisement and stuck my hat in the ring, and everything worked out.
Okay. And how long ago was that?
It just started July 15th of this 2019.
2019.
So I'm new
Okay.
to Westchester as far as the village government goes. But I've been around in the area, like I said, all my life.
Yeah.
And the village of Darien, or city of Darien, um, is about the same size municipality or government as Westchester is.
Are they home rule?
They are home rule.
Okay. So you've been a village manager for a home rule community.
Assistant, yes.
Okay. All right. Just thought that would be an interesting point because you're seeing the difference between a non-home rule community and a home rule community. I mean, what was the other one you worked for? Were they home rule or?
Actually, yeah, the village of Stickney was home rule as well.
Okay.
I was the treasurer there, so.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I don't know if those are notes you brought. I mean, hopefully you've got a lot that you'd want to tell us. And I know there's a lot of questions out there too. I mean,
Sure.
people on social media, that's the other thing is you get so much feedback about the questions that people want to know about what's going on in the village. Where do you want to start? Like, let's give you the freedom to start where you want to.
Well, let's start with the home rule and get that out of the way.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
so many other
Let's do the dirty
great
work.
things- yeah, there's so many other great things going on in
Sure.
this village.
Okay.
That are really exciting, and
Yeah.
I see this place, the village moving forward.
Okay.
So the home rule issue, I guess it came up back in 16. When I got on board, I always said it would be nice to be home rule. It just gives you a lot more flexibility. You're not controlled by the state. There's other avenues to raise revenue. And in every home rule town that I've been at, we have not gone above the 5% of the CPI for the property tax. That was not the issue. In the city of Darien, we didn't go with the transfer tax. That's another issue that a lot of people see.
Realtors like myself.
Yeah. I mean, there's a debate on that. A lot of people say, well, people are moving out of your town. It is a fee that's probably never, even though it's out there, it's probably never stopped a deal from happening. People are going to pay it, obviously, because they have to. The county charges it. So it's.
But there's another side of it too that
Sure.
that is my world, and that is rehab. So
Yes.
you buy a house for 120, 140,000, let's say, around here, and you
Spend
turn it in.
1,400,
Well, yeah, you turn it
2,000.
into a $250,000 house and a place where somebody wants to move into Westchester, and then you're hit for doing that because you're transferring it to, and I've done that here. I've done that in the village, but I've also bought plenty of homes outside of here that have that transfer tax or that. And we'll get into some of the permitting stuff too when we get away from home rule. But my question, and I think a lot of people have this question, is that it does seem, if you do the statistics and you look around, it does seem a little bit like taxes are higher or run a little higher in home rule districts versus non-home rule. Would you say that's anything that you've looked into that you see a trend or?
I have not. My philosophy, I'm conservative by nature, obviously being an accountant, was my first tax is never to go for property taxes. I think in the state of Illinois we're burdened enough. I mean, I own a home, so I pay the taxes as well.
Yeah.
So that is the last tax that I will ever want to increase.
Yeah.
If we could resolve our pension issues in the state of Illinois, I think you would see a lot of relief on the property tax issue. But politicians don't seem to want to do that.
Yeah.
So I definitely do not want to go after homeowners for property taxes or even the transfer tax. I want to make it easy for people to come in and rehab their homes, beautify their property, take care of their property. I want to stay out of people's business because we're not here for that. We're here for police protection, fire protection, and streets and roads. And really, that's my belief in government or on government and the role in society.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, we're on the same page with a lot of people I think out there that say that government should be. And I don't really care whether you call this conservative or whatever because people want to put labels on everything. But government should be small for the people and do just what they need to and not more. And a lot of times it's gotten bloated and out of control. And I get how people can get frustrated with that. But at the same time, another reason why I can see that I'm going to enjoy doing this is to give people also perspective. Like, I didn't want to be a hypocrite. Like,
Sure.
I would get upset when something would happen, or maybe having a strong opinion on something within the village. And I might talk to a few people about it that live here or something like that. And then I realize, well, but I'm not going to be the person that wants to really ever do anything about it. I'm not going to go, I don't go to the meetings. I didn't even vote in the last election. I mean, for God's sakes, like how disconnected can you be? But then I didn't want to be a hypocrite because I wanted to say, like, well, you look at your own finances, and I think everybody needs to do this, even though they don't want to be called to the rug on that.
Sure.
Look at your own finances. If somebody really shined a light on those, would you be proud of them and say that I run as efficiently as I can and I don't need any more income because all my expenses are right where they need to be, and they're going to be that way for the next 10 years? Well, the world moves around us, and we have a lot more factors that are putting pressure on our finances than just the government of West, the town of Westchester and the government of Westchester and their officials. I mean, the cost of goods and services and things are going to continue to rise, and that oil change that was $15 10 years, 10 years ago is automatic 30. I mean, you can't really find it for less than $35, and then the upsells. So I mean, it's hard to say that you shouldn't look for other sources of revenue, and just focus on managing correctly. I think all that should be there, and I think part of that is keeping government small. But I mean, that touches on a few issues like that Nick already said, which is that a lot of employees around here, if that's where we're going to try to run efficiently, then they're asked to do a lot of different things that they weren't asked to do, and they get in over their heads and then they leave or something like that. So, where I guess one of the general questions too would be, when you came in from a home rule community and you came into here, did you immediately identify a few things that looked like maybe this was like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah,
did you immediately feel that, like, okay, things need to change, and I can identify a few places where they do need to change, but this isn't going to get better unless something happens, or is it just going to take time?
well, it's twofold.
Uh-huh.
So when I came in, there were a lot of things that needed to get done. We didn't have a finance director for a couple of years. We didn't have a public works director for a while, and the village manager, I know there were some interims and some turnover in that spot as well. So there were a lot of things to get done. We were behind on our audit for FY 2019. Um, so yeah, there were a lot of things to tackle. Looking at it, obviously the finances weren't where they should be. Um, Home rule would help it, but that wasn't my first thought when I came in there. My first thought was getting a team together that could get this place back in shape, because it is a good community. The residents are really, they've been very thoughtful, considerate, and the feedback has been positive. And even when it's negative, it's something you learn from.
Yeah.
So no, my first thought wasn't, hey, we got to get home rule.
Yeah, no, and I didn't expect that kind of answer. I just didn't know if there were some identifiers, some red flags that went off that said, if we had home rule, because that's one of the things people are saying is that some of the people that are for it are saying, well, if we get out from under the state, well, what does that even mean? Like, what, in your experience being in a home rule community and then coming to one that's not, how much is it the state? How much does the state really come into play here?
Well, we do have to follow their parameters and their statutes. So fees and fines, and that's kind of the bigger arena, is the fees and the fines that we charge people who do wrong. We can raise those more than we can being non-home rule. And that's actually where we'd like to go with some of this, the fees and the fines. If people are doing wrong in your community, well, then we're gonna have to pay for it, and it's gonna hurt, and hopefully they won't do it again. We get a lot of people who don't pay their tickets and trying to collect those. We're gonna have another hurdle now because the state of Illinois is refusing to go after that revenue where they were intercepting it on tax refunds. They're not gonna do that anymore. So trying to collect that revenue is always a difficult task. We had the the vicious dog incident here. I know there's a lot more police powers that we could tailor towards our own community. Um, what else? Some of the zoning issues. Um, if were home rule, we could implement a crime-free housing, rental properties. We could look at some more stricter policies on renters, Airbnbs, things of that nature. Um, so there's a lot of different things that can help us.
I hate to do it because I know that people are going to be thinking it though, but then so that what you're saying sounds good in terms of their names, but essentially what that means is fees and fines for wrongdoings of those natures. So
Yes.
landlords and tenants in terms of crime and in terms of, so it's implementing some of the things that
not necessarily on the crime-free housing. Something like that is something to deter criminals from moving into your community, getting a lease, not being able to get them out. This helps landlords who don't want criminals living in their buildings, helps them void their contract, void any lease they have, and evict them quicker than not having that in place.
okay.
Training landlords to look for and do proper background checks on tenants, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So that's the things that the crime-free housing would address.
And that's interesting to me because I've owned, up to 13 houses in Indianapolis, and
Okay.
I could always roll them over, in 30 days.
Okay.
And it was the judges were very favorable to the system and how it's gamed. And Illinois was always, at least from what I heard, I never dug in and never became, as informed as I should have on that because I never wanted to own rental property here.
Okay.
But part of the reason that I stayed away from that is because it seemed like Illinois was much easier on very, very, very much easier on tenants than landlords. And sometimes you just, you can kind of identify when things are not the way they should be. And then for us to go through a 9 to 12 month process of getting them out, it does.
Property.
Oh, absolutely. It hurts the whole process. But I mean, I could probably say that with confidence that I saved a lot of money and damage by being able to move people quickly.
Yes.
It just, they had to know the system well enough to, get out or to move out and move on. And a lot of them did. But what else then? So you mentioned zoning. I mean, so do you have an expansion on that other than because that for me triggers the TIF discussion that's been going on? Is that a part of it?
Yeah. So I mean the TIF district. That's when I was talking about the exciting things. Those are the two areas that I'm encouraged that we're getting past and we're setting up the TIFs to bring development to this area here, which is blighted where we sit.
Did you have TIF districts in Darien?
Nothing in Darien, and they were looking at them in Stickney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever dealt with a TIF district in terms of from my understanding, it freezes the valuations of the property at a certain rate, and then all monies collected as that valuation is increased is then put into a coffer.
Right, that's the increment.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So say it's $1 million. Say the whole Roosevelt Road area is collecting $1 million. Next year it collects $1.2 million. That 200 goes into the TIF district. That TIF money is good for 23 years or shorter if we elect to wrap up the TIF if development is done. And that money is used to incentivize people developers to come in here and develop our properties.
What can it be used for though? That 200,000.
So it can be used for various things, and that'll all be outlined in the TIF ordinance.
Okay.
But infrastructure, land acquisition, remodeling.
Infrastructure of the district.
Oh, that
not just
right.
Westchester, but
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not for the streets outside of the TIF.
My vote is just make Westchester a TIF, and then you don't have to worry about the, that
the
that
schools would hate that.
Yeah, I know, right?
So,
I know. I've read enough about it that it seems like that's not really, that's just a joke. But
yeah, no, I understand. And that is the tough part, is because the schools, they do. There is money that goes to the schools if any kids are brought in, and there's money set aside in the budget from the TIF to go to the school districts. But they typically, it doesn't cover the cost of educating the children for those years.
And that's one of the things that I think is a very hot topic when it comes to the TIF district, or I don't know that home rule really affects that as much, but maybe this is more of a discussion for the school board in terms of what plans and changes they would like to see made. Article just came out that they'd like to sort of mirror the Math and Science Academy model or something like that. I haven't quite read through all that, but if we're trying to improve the school systems here with the situation we have in place, so is it your feeling that putting the TIFs in place and not having that revenue available for that kind of thing won't necessarily change or hurt our situation currently, or do you think that it's too bad because if that revenue and that increase in revenue could be available for the schools, then maybe everything would change?
So my thought on the TIFs is that 23 years seems like a long time, but in the development world, it's really not. Yeah. And the idea is that we're going to bring in revenue to offset the property taxes that are needed by the village and the general fund to keep its core projects and core responsibilities afloat and sustainable. And then once it's developed, it'll be self-sustaining. It'll go back on the tax rolls. Mm. So where we were collecting $1 million 23 years ago, now we should be collecting whatever that would be, $2 to $3 million plus sales tax revenue, which is obviously a big driver. Yeah. We need retail. We don't have much retail in the village of Westchester, so that's the idea, is to develop it so that it supplants some of the property tax needs, and we don't have to increase property taxes every year, and maybe we could even freeze them for a year because we have enough money generated to cover all of our needs. So that's really the goal and the intention. Okay. And the good thing is, I think you have a responsible board that would, if we were to the point where we were fully developed, they would probably stop the TIF and just move forward and let that be a regular, go back to the regular district.
And have you, in the other cities you worked in, have you seen what have you seen in terms of development? I mean, when Darien or Stickney drew in any developing, how did that look? I mean, it's my feeling, and I've talked about it in the podcast, that I have a little bit of experience in terms of just how development works, just enough to sound stupid. But if a development moves any faster than 12 to 36 months, something, somebody's palms are getting greased, because like, this is a longer process that, unless you have total buy-in from the village or from the residents and all this other stuff, then it takes a while to get these things going. So like you said, I mean, 23 years, 3 of that might be getting eaten up just by looking for people that want to develop, and then another 2 or 3 by what you're putting there, and
time frame to build and construct and lease up.
Right. But here's the other thing too, and I'm just playing devil's advocate. Then in the meantime, you pass home rule, and then gaming or gambling is one of the things that we tax the most. Let's throw a big establishment there, even though the state has limits on how many machines and all that good stuff. But so I think that's a concern of people. I just wanted to also address is that there's a lot of stuff that's getting thrown around out there that I think people they just need to understand a little bit better. And maybe this, even myself, like maybe this is a good resource to be able to do that, because you can actually talk through people that have been there, done that, and seen that, and then you come in and you're moving things around. What's like one of the biggest changes, or what's one of the things that you're really trying to fix here or like figure out?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
Well, I mean, is it I guess, like, let me give you a category. I mean, is it financial? Is it, I mean, obviously we didn't have the right records, but
we've been audited, so we've got clean audits.
What's our bond rating, by the way?
I want to say it's A+ right now. We're actually going to get a rating within the next couple of weeks, because we're doing the refunding on the motor fuel tax 2010 bond.
Okay.
So we're going through that rating process right now.
Okay.
Some of the issues that we really need to tackle is our utility billing. I think we've gotten a good idea of what was wrong, and we get our arms around it. There were a lot of people, 400 approximately, residents that weren't getting a bill for one reason or another. So we had some financial issues in the past.
Yeah. Luckily, they came forward and let you know that.
Oh, absolutely. They were knocking on the door.
Yeah, no, it's.
But we found it, and We're not trying to, and some of it is not really a fault of theirs. Our meters weren't reading, we didn't catch it, that type of thing.
Sure.
And they were still getting a bill for the garbage and paying it, and probably just assuming
That
the
was
water's
in
on it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're correcting those issues, but could be some significant dollars that we'll see coming back to the village
Okay.
on the water rates.
Is it, look, you've been a part of home rule communities, and we're
Sure.
sort of like, I'd like to, we talked a little bit about TIF and we kind of got off track of the home rule thing, but I just want to make sure we kind of wash out all the issues there. Don't you feel like maybe, I shouldn't ask you for your opinion because I don't feel like that's fair, but in my opinion and a lot of people's opinion, this seems quick, unorganized, and just not the right time. And I think that the argument there is just that things seem to be, each person that we talk to seems to have the sense that things are getting fixed. But this is a lot of power, I think, to be handing out in a time when we're figuring things out. Now, I agree with the argument that you know, like I said before, you can't just assume that no more revenue needs to come in or that we're never going to need to raise taxes or do these things, because you can go out to referendum and people can say no, and now you don't have the money anyway. And we as a village need to understand that those referendums are important and everybody wants them, but then when it's for alleys that don't affect them, then things start to get weird.
Right.
And
or
you know,
for schools that people don't have kids in school.
Exactly. My kids go to private school, or you know, and I'm not saying that you need to altruistically like chip in, you know, but
Sure.
you know, we
Pay
do
up the
we do for
taxes.
charities and we do for a lot of things in our life, and I don't think people want to put it in perspective, or maybe they're just not called to put it in perspective what they're putting their money toward, and that the 3 cents that we implement on gas tax is actually, you know, I said it before, I'll actually get my gas here now, knowing and understanding more about why we need that and where it's coming from, rather than drive over. Is it cheaper for me? Yeah, but it's 3 cents a gallon cheaper to affect my town,
Right.
Versus my personal situation. And nobody wants to pay as more taxes than they need to.
Absolutely.
But this is, if we, as an accountant or a numbers person, if you take it down to your personal situation and everybody were to try to think that way, I think a lot of these arguments wouldn't sound so one-sided, or wouldn't sound so bad to them. And that doesn't, you know what I mean? I'm not sure, you know, it doesn't mean that we have to try to convince you. It's just think about these things fully in the bigger picture. So,
and that's I guess where I'd like to start is that they've been talking about this for years. They had this on the ballot in 2016, so this is nothing new. That was only 4 short years ago that they talked about this. They were talking about the TIFs for years.
Yeah.
I think what you're seeing is a new board, and you know, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but we're getting things done. Things that have been on the back burner and things that they've been talking about for years, we're actually just doing them now.
Yeah.
We're just working and pushing forward.
Okay.
So I don't think this is something that should surprise many people if they've been listening or been looking at the meetings. They've been talking about this for quite some time before I even got here.
Yeah.
Now we're just implementing it.
Yeah.
So this came about in December. We had to get it on the December meeting, so we talked about it back then. People said they didn't realize, but we had to have it. We talked about it in November, December, January, February, and come up in March.
And look, I'm not. Trust me, I'm not whining or in any
No,
rate. No, I'm saying like for the podcast. I'm
Yep.
not whining about the analytics of the podcast, but I've done 3 episodes. My average view time or average time to listen to the podcast is around 14 minutes.
Right.
These are an hour long. And so I get it. Like, people don't have the time or the energy, or maybe they just don't want to. I mean, like I said, unless this is fun and interesting to them,
Right.
a lot of times they glaze over it, but they'll spend an hour easily wasting their time during a day. And don't let me be the hypocrite. I do it too, which is why, just because I've had enough of that, and I feel like, you know, if I'm going to put my energy toward having something meaningful in my life, or making an impact, or doing something that I feel like has purpose, then I thought about it. Where could I probably make the most impact And I'm not going to go caucus for somebody, nationally, or I'm not going to go out and try to make a national impact. I just don't feel like that has really the same difference as if I focused locally. And so that's sort of where this came from. And the frustration of people not listening is one of those things. Like, I'd rather just put those analytics out there and say, look, it's up to you guys. Like, if 14 minutes is your threshold, then great. I'm not changing the podcast because I'm independent and I want to have these conversations whether you listen or not. To have people that come out on Facebook and say, hey, there were 4 people at the meeting. Well, how do you get a good judge of, you're going to end up with a bias, and you're going to end up with a limited voter pool of informed voters and residents if you're not doing more. If you're not doing more, unfortunately, to get in their face and to say, you're not paying attention, please pay attention at least so that you don't have a silly argument like, well, just because. And to along those lines, I have to just challenge, like, don't feel like we have a new board. I feel like we have 2 new members of the board and then 1 new appointee. Okay. So,
well, that's 3 out of 6.
It is, and so I like to do that just because it's something that has to be said so that people understand. And the facts are that the new party ran with Frank Perry, who's a veteran. Nick's still here and things like that. So maybe they have the freedom, and this is just to soften it a bit, that they have the freedom with a couple of new people and with you and everything like that. Now we have the freedom to sort of come together. Maybe they work better together. And I think that's one of the things people need to hear too. Is that, like, just because it's not fully new, wash out everybody and start over. No, maybe the people that have always been saying these things are now, like, seeing movement, and they're getting excited because they have a group of people that can really work together and to represent the people.
And that was one of the mantras, was build your team and move things forward. So that's what I've been trying to do. And there's definitely a ton of value.
Yeah.
I've kept on, guys, we've got a lot of people who have 20 and 30 years experience, and it's invaluable.
Yeah.
The mayor, especially with his knowledge of things, and he may not always agree with me and the things I do, but he listens. And so it's not to say the new board's coming in, but we're trying to get things done. We're trying to move forward and not just stay stagnant. And I think that's the worst thing. I think indecision is worse than a bad decision sometimes.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, we're 20 years down the road in the same spot, wondering how the heck we're going to patch the holes or fix the bridges or do the alleys.
Yeah.
So
you're working hard. You're doing a lot of things that you need to do to change with the utility billing and the different stuff. Do you feel like even if home rule fails, you're probably going to see an ask for it again?
No. That's not my intention. If it fails, it fails. We still have to carry on. We've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
We're not just trying to throw things at the wall.
But what's the situation? I mean, how? See,
Lamont. Dire, and I don't.
Okay, great.
We're not going to shut down if we don't get this.
No, I get it. Because
Lamont will make it more difficult.
Lamont was one of those case studies that I looked up, and I watched a lot of the YouTube video. It took me an hour to watch that thing, and it was just it was a presentation. It was very structured. I read about them having flyers and postcards sent out.
And that's the other thing. The board, at its official capacity, and even me, my official capacity, we can't come out and spend money and get a PR piece put out there, really. The organization, if you want to call it that, it's not like you have political organizations here where you're drumming up all kinds of donations. It's not what they're about.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are grassroots, homegrown people that just want to do the best for the community.
Yeah.
And they think that this gives them a little bit more flexibility. And I'll just go back to, do you really want Springfield running your town or the elected officials that you could kick out in a couple of years? And that's really, the bottom line.
No, I totally hear that. And that's what I wanted to know about.
The ordinance, we're actually going to post a draft ordinance. We're going to be voting on it. We're going to put an ordinance in place if the village board levies higher than 5% property tax or the CPI, it'll trigger automatically the board to also do another resolution to put a referendum on the next ballot to get rid of home rule. So it's kind of like a poison pill, you know. I hope that hopefully, if they did something wrong, we could get rid of the home rule and it would only affect 1 year of property taxes.
Yeah.
Because it'd be on the referendum, and if people were that up in arms about it, they would.
Do you feel like a village can do a lot of damage in a year in terms of debt or anything else that would make that a slippery slope too?
No, no, and again, I think you've got people in place that they live here, they love the community, they don't want to see the property taxes go up. That's just the opposite. I would love to cut the taxes.
Yeah.
I'd love to cut them all.
Well, look, and if the situation gets any worse, that's inevitable in a way. So,
Yeah.
you know, having you here now and getting this situation under control as best as we can, even if that means, okay, we can do it without home rule powers or whatever that would do for us.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's the idea that if things get worse or get bad enough, then, you know, just like this building we're in, you know, I mean, that people are just now hearing, oh, well, you know, maybe this is what it's for. You know, they're always looking for that angle, and it's like, and I mentioned it on the podcast that you see taxes go up or you see things change within a village, and then they're building, you know, not a Taj Mahal, but they're building a brand new building, and then, you know, and it's nice and it's comfortable and it gives room for growth and all the other things that villages anticipate.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it was a $4.5 million building that, you know.
4.5. I wish you could build.
Right, or whatever. I mean, you know, that's.
So we were just doing something because we're in the process of looking.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Because we're obviously, if the TIF district goes through, and we're anticipating it does, we're sitting on 5 acres of prime TIF real estate.
Yeah.
So our goal is to move out of the area and bring in a retail space. This building is very old, not really conducive, not set up very well. So we're almost looking at, for what we could sell this building, what we had it appraised for, and what we could purchase another building and revamp it, almost an even swap. So I think that's pretty good to get a building that's maybe 15 years old, bigger than this, and redevelop the spot that we're in.
Yeah.
We're not looking to build a Taj Mahal at all.
Yeah.
I think cost of construction, even if you went at $200 a square foot, you know, you're looking at $8 million on the building we have here.
Yeah.
We're not looking to do anything like that.
Sure.
So,
sure. I've been thinking about that a lot too, just in the sense that you are on a great piece of property here that could be something great. And then when you think about it, not to go back to TIF, but then you think about, well, then the issue becomes not. One of my questions was, could this be one group's vision for the town or for the village that, you know, if that gets messed up in any way over the next 5 years, then it's like that vision changes. And who do we have in place do we have totally neutral people that when developers come through, there's not going to be like sort of a selling out of, you know, because if the developer gets too much, it's, you know, just because you put a TIF in place, then that's when the negotiation starts. You know, it's like then the developers come in, they say, we want to do this. Well, what will that do to values? We don't need that much more residential necessarily, but what kind of retail is it? People threw a big fit or had differing opinions, I should say, in regard to the family video site. You know, I heard a lot of great things though. People go in, the store's clean and it's good, and you know, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it's just like, it's stuff like that. Residents are always going to have a voice. They're always going to have a say. And back to just to finish up the Lamont thing is that they put out, in my mind, going through it, they put out this big presentation for home rule, right? And the village shot it down. And so village residents are always going to have a voice. And so,
and they should.
Yeah. And so it's like, and it looked to me like they seemed like they were saying that we're in good shape, but things are going to get bad. And there was a lot of fear mongering. I don't get that sense from you that there's any fear mongering here.
No,
it's just that you're literally saying we would prefer to have these types of movements and flexibilities and controls.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
That, you know, gosh, each one of those different areas, debt, taxes, and then of course the powers that some of what I wanted to get into too would be the permitting. You know, just the idea that we already have a sale inspection here. I think they're good for certain things, but I think like
we've debated that too.
Yeah, like it's
back and forth whether or not we want to keep going down that route, keep doing these inspections, or just pull it.
Yeah.
You know, buyer beware.
Yeah, I was here, and well, the thing is, those those inspections can be carried on to the new buyer.
Well,
That's what I like about here. Some villages won't let you, they'll let you, but then there's an escrow required.
yes,
And I just dealt with that 2 properties ago.
okay.
I won't name the town, but I mean, just brutal when it comes to
Trying to
forcing
get your money
you.
back, too.
Yeah. And I was just like, I don't have, what if I were a homeowner? I don't have this kind of money. And they're like,
If you're trying to buy the house.
and the tone I got from the village was terrible. It was that, well, you should have, you're the one buying the house. You should know better, or you should know. And it's like, what a great welcome to the town. It's like, well, it's your fault for buying the house. Well, look, I'm taking a house from what I bought it for and increasing the value.
Right.
And if that's not something you should cater to, I don't know what is. I mean, I've gotten a lot of attitude in the villages from flippers, but there's so many, just to give fair credit, there's so many bad apples out there in this industry.
Sure.
And that comes, from
Whether intentional
construction industry,
Right,
retail, or flipping, all those things. It's one of those things that a lot of people, they want to do it. I've seen it over the years. They want to do it, but they're not really experienced at it or aren't really
Sure.
that good at it. That could have a detrimental effect on the property and the people themselves. And then you have the people that just cut corners.
Right.
So I don't know how I feel. I don't know that I believe that a sale inspection needs to be not done. I think it's
Right.
okay. But what I've seen across a ton of villages is that if there's a focus on safety and a focus on the right things and how that's being enforced, then I kind of understand.
Well, here was my thought on that, and we're still debating it. My thought was, I would say 95% of home buyers now hire their own appraiser
Mhm.
or own inspector.
Yeah.
Give that inspector our list. Let the purchaser pay their inspector one time, and as long as our list is looked at and is signed off on, we could send our inspector in for a nominal fee just to review and ensure that,
Mhm.
if we had to, or send them in for any issues that they checked off that weren't up to code.
Yeah.
And that eliminates them having to pay for their own inspector and then the seller paying for one. Now we're paying two inspectors to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's just one of my thoughts there. Like I said, I want to make it as easy but as safe and practical for people to do business, which includes purchasing their homes here. Because that's a major transaction in your life, in anybody's life.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And we hear so many good things about Westchester between its location and
Sure.
the people and everything. And it's obviously family was here, but it's one of the reasons, when I tell people I'm from Westchester, in a lot of other towns, they're like, oh, I love Westchester.
Yeah.
People always have some sort of connection to Westchester, which is, I don't know whether it's just the group I'm around or the people I run into, but it has that feel and it has that draw. So boy, a little bit more retail, a little tweak here and there.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape.
If just we're going to continue to grow. And then that's why I want to make it clear too that you guys moved very quickly about the fire sprinkler thing. I mean, I was impressed because I'm in that business and I'm like, whoa, like they already got an ordinance changed in that regard. And my wife and I are in the middle of talking about building up. Someone else got online and said, I was thinking about building up, but now I'm just going to move because they have this ordinance in place. And I'm like, no. Like that has to be able to be changed. And before I knew it, before I looked again, it was like, oh yeah, we're changing the fire sprinkler ordinance. And I was like, okay, that something's going on here.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, like something.
That was something that I saw, and obviously everybody wants safety. Nobody wants to have their house burned down.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was overreaching and cost prohibitive for the everyday household. You're going to spend $100,000, now you add 15% onto that, because not only is it the sprinkler, you have to increase your water service. And that's probably $6,000 to $8,000 to have someone come out and give you a 1-inch water service into your house.
Yeah.
Then you have to have it monitored every year, and I just thought it was not the right thing for the village, especially given the housing stock. We had a lot of those brick Baltas 2-bedroom homes that are perfect for going up a second story and putting all the bedrooms up there. And I just thought it would encourage exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Building up and keeping your family here.
Yeah.
And making the properties more valuable. So yeah, Glad to hear that.
No,
A little
yeah, it
bit of
was.
validation.
Yeah, I think it's important to note. I mean, you, when do you get the right people? You know what I mean? If you can't celebrate finally getting some of the people that are making changes and moves and things, and I've come into the village for a number of different things over the years and had my fair share of, not being received as well. But I mean, the other side of it is, we're kind of we're not always the great neighbors we think we are, and so I encourage people to look at themselves too and try to understand that you come in and you complain to the village. I mean, it's kind of a no-win for you guys because you want to listen to everybody and you want to affect change, but you can implement changes that are affected by 1% or the loudest voices, and so it's kind of like, well, you guys are in a tough spot because
We are, but
how do you make the right decision as to what to change and
yeah,
what's the impact going to be on people and how they feel, and
yeah,
so I think that's just an example of where you have to look at you listening and then having everybody say, okay, yeah, they're listening, and you know, it may not be the serious issue you care about, but I mean, you have to at least give credit where credit's due. And I had another thought in mind in terms of the permitting and home rule. I mean, that's not something that's just like you get home rule and you get to just do whatever you want. You can anyway. I mean, they at one time they implemented the state implemented at least I think on the plumbing that villages couldn't veer from state code.
Right.
And I think they changed that again back because there were a lot of villages with their own ordinances, and it was like, people couldn't keep up with what one village required versus another.
That's the other problem with our village, our current building code. We're going from the 2012 to the 2015, but we've had so many amendments to our code, people get confused. So we're trying to streamline that, and if it's good enough for the 2015 building code, I think in most cases it's going to be good for the village. Um, so we're trying to streamline all of that and make it easier so people can go online and look at it themselves and say, okay, I think I need this, 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 and this. And we want to make sure that our permitting department and our building department works with you guys, not against you. Because if you fail something, that's the worst feeling in the world when an inspector comes out and says, no, this fails. Well, our guys are taught, if you fail them, explain to them why, show them how to correct it, so you could come back and get them passed. Because it's all about, the contractor who's got his guys out there now, he's got to pay to redo it, he's losing money on his deal.
Yeah.
And the homeowner is frustrated too because now they can't get back in,
Yeah.
or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
But
and there, to that point too, I think there's many times in which I have cost myself a little bit of money on a rehab because I'm willing to do something that I know the homeowner's not going to necessarily have to deal with quickly. And there's a lot of things in a house that you can really cut some corners, and you can pass an inspection, but give it 5 years, and it's just one of those things that if inspectors can come through and say, okay, you did that, but
probably isn't the best way.
Yeah, this isn't, and in regard to rehabbers, I think that that's okay. I think that's something that they should know, that if the difference is a few bucks, that you should have to find somewhere else to make that up, because the bones are where it's at, especially for communities. And if you want to work in that community again or rehab another project in that community, I think they'll know you for doing at least something that makes sense for the homeowner, and that you're not having things happen. I mean, that I've seen plenty of tiles falling off the wall, and then I've seen plenty of plumbing issues and electrical issues and all kinds of things. So it's so yeah, just focusing on the safety. But it's not like you are allowed, even in non-home rule, to sort of pass ordinances that make sense, and that you can change things around. And so I think I don't want to miss that. A lot of people think sometimes that that's also another power given, but so yeah, I mean, I think we've sort of talked enough about obviously the home rule and the powers that it gives, and we've talked a little bit just in where we're headed. Anything else? I mean, I know you must have something else that you want to touch on.
Our everyone complains. Well, I shouldn't say everyone complains, but obviously our public works has a monumental job keeping our infrastructure and the streets plowed and the infrastructure intact and the alleys, and that costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
We have a very, very talented crew that can do a lot of work in-house, but obviously it takes money, and we can do it a lot cheaper, but they're good enough to get it done. They laid 600 feet of pipe the other day. That probably would have cost us $50,000, and they were able to get it done for 6,000, if that. You know,
Mm.
and we got a very responsive crew, and these guys are good workers, and I think we've got like I said, a good young crew back there. We have a good police department, good fire department. So I think we've got a great group of people here so far.
Good. I'm anxious to talk to the public works director and the
Yeah, he could
new
tell you.
police
He
chief.
could enlighten you. He was just blowing my mind with all the things that we have to do
Yeah.
as far as the streets go and the alleys, and it seems like they have the knowledge. They were overlooked a little bit in the past, and I don't want to overlook them because they've been here 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Some guys with real knowledge. He could tell you, point down to a street location, say, yeah, our pipe is there, and it's a 10-inch main going into this or that. I mean, that's how good these guys are.
Yeah.
Um, and and I really value their opinion, and I think that we could get a lot more done um, doing some of these things in house. But it takes a little bit of money,
Yeah.
and that's what we're striving to do here: is get our house in order
Yeah.
and move forward. Things are looking good on our this fiscal year. We're looking at a surplus.
Okay.
So FY20 coming up in April of this year, and we're starting our budget talks, and we're budgeting another surplus for next year. So I'd like to get that 3 years in a row, just to build up.
You might have to repeat that because I think people are gonna be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think people, they're caught up in the fear mongering and the idea that that things are bad and that that's the reason why you're
Not at all.
reaching for power. And I
Nope.
think that's something very important for people to understand, is that if I don't know. I got called out for having bias, but I just like to look at look at all sides of it. I mean, this
Sure.
isn't Fox News or MSNBC. I'm independent, but I'm wanting to figure it all out before I probably wouldn't make my decision until the day before.
Sure.
But like, at least if things are going well and you're asking for this power, or they are, I should say, there must be some reason for it, or maybe it's just the idea that, well, with it we could do even more. Well, let's spend a couple years making sure that people fully understand, and that's why you make me even more excited about what's going on here, because you can actually have consistent conversations once a month or once,
Yeah.
however often we can do this, because I still have to maintain an income, but when you have these kind of conversations, you can really sit down and get a feel for where we're at. You can get a feel for the character of the person running the show, and I think it's so important for people to hear this so that they can say, okay, well, yeah, I mean, they're not basing it on things being so bad that we must take your money.
No,
We
not
must
at
get
all.
this under control. And one of those things
The boat is not sinking.
yeah, okay,
That's for
good.
sure.
No, and that's good to hear. And one of the things I was going to ask you about, and I've said this in the previous podcast, but the village sticker thing, like I've always thought there's some towns that have it and some that don't, and I've kind of asked my question there. Is that, do you look at certain areas of running the town and revenue that's coming in and where it's coming in from? Is that an impossibility?
To get rid of it?
Well, I mean, I don't want to go that far. I get it. I get why the money's important, but I mean,
It's honestly, it's not a huge moneymaker. It's more about trying to keep organization with the parking. On the north side, it's very difficult. We don't want our residents to have non-residents park there and they got to walk 3 blocks. So that's why we just changed that truck plate ordinance just recently.
yeah,
So people businesses can't have 8 of their business trucks parked all up and down the neighborhood blocks.
okay,
So it's really more about keeping us organized, keeping our residents, I don't want to say safe, but having them be able to park near their house,
yeah,
because some people just don't have the driveway. Some people, their garages are filled with stuff, whatever. They don't park in the garages.
yeah. What about a system where they bring in their utility bill, or they can prove that they live there, and you have certain areas or streets that get a sticker, and it's not necessarily something they have to pay for, but
It's probably just easier accounting wise and logistics wise to just have everyone buy a sticker. I
yeah,
mean, for the $35 or $37, I believe it is.
yeah,
I know we've talked about putting it on an annual bill or on a water bill, but that really doesn't help us sometimes. And then having them come in once a year, they get new cars.
yeah,
I just don't think it's that outrageous.
yeah,
If we could get a better system where it's all online,
yeah,
where people can go online and type it in, send
hmm
in their payment, and we can mail a sticker out. That's the goal to get to. I want to do as much
yeah.
online
Okay,
as possible.
that's good.
So,
Yeah, I've talked to some people in Westmont and things like that, and they say, well, the reason we don't have stickers is just too hard to manage. We didn't want to deal with all the. You'd be surprised how much management that takes, and
yeah, it does.
time and money out of our employees just to manage that system or that sense. So we just didn't do it. But I mean, I guess in certain areas that might not be necessary because there aren't any parking disputes.
Right.
But here, I think that's the other thing. It's interesting because my wife might be one that appreciates that, is that there are parking disputes here. Like there's
Always,
it's
yeah.
not like and our argument or our thing was, well, we're not the city of Chicago, so I don't understand why is there a need for a sticker to show that we can park here when there's not, down in the city, we get it, but here there's plenty of parking.
Right.
No, but there's parking disputes about certain streets or certain areas.
And the north side, again, they don't have plenty of parking.
Okay.
And a lot of them don't have driveways.
Okay.
Or like
Yeah.
you said, the garage is filled if they have an alleyway.
Yeah.
Or the alleyway is not that great and
Yeah.
they don't want to pull through it in the winter.
Yeah.
So that's, and you got four cars to a household a lot of times nowadays.
Yeah.
Two kids and so.
Yeah, I know how that
that's
goes.
the
Yeah.
scenario,
Yep. I had a work truck, and we had
Okay.
the van and the SUV, so we had three, and then we have our camper in the garage. So it's
Okay.
it's yeah, it gets to be a lot to figure out. But then that's
part of the
again,
process.
that's where it is. We're paying for three vehicles, and that's our choice. But at the same time, I've softened on the idea that it does create some revenue for the village, and it's not really that expensive. But I mean, somebody on Facebook had posted all these taxes that we have in the state of Illinois, and it's like, I made this analogy before too, where it's like 6-7 taxes versus one that kind of accomplishes the monetary objective of all those. Which would people sort of psychologically be more willing to do, And it's like, don't make me come
Almost
in.
like a flat tax.
Yeah, like don't make me. Nah, yeah, that's a dangerous. No, but don't make me come into the village every April 30th, because I've been late and had to pay double, and it's like, you make us come in here, you make us mail it in. I get it. No, that's just all my. Everybody has their own problems in terms of that, because it's their own fault. But it's at this. At the same time, it's an extra thing you have to put on your plate is, oh yeah, I got to get the village sticker. And if you threw $35 into my tax bill, like even property taxes, it'd be like, I wouldn't feel it, and every year
Everyone would complain about it.
right,
Property tax.
right. But every year, maybe I'd get mailed a sticker, and it'd be like, but how do you know? How do you know how many cars people have? How do you know? It's just a whole, yeah.
The logistics part is.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're saying, so things like that. Let's just say that that's an example. I picked on it, but let's say that's an example of the types of revenue we have.
Yeah.
Your overall picture is seeing that the revenue that we're bringing in can be managed better, can be accounted for better, and then how
Our big ticket items are the things that are always, and every municipality faces this.
Yeah.
Trying to manage their road program to make sure that their roads are in good shape and that their infrastructure is in good shape. Like I said, I think our public works, we've got a good handle on it now, to the point where we're hoping we can put together a plan. We've got a catalog of all the roads. We rate them every year, and we say this one really needs to get done. So we prioritize it that way, and based on funding, that's what we get done. We're getting they're really good at getting extended life out of the roads with the crack seal program or micro surfacing, so we can get an extra 10, 15 years out of the roads.
Okay.
So we are doing that better now. I think we're going to see that come to a point where we know we're gonna need X amount, and we can plan for that, to do X amount of roads every year, and just like maintaining our police fleet. If you don't buy a couple cars every year, you're gonna end up having to buy a whole fleet of them, 10, 12, 15 cars, the police vehicles, you know, 70,000 miles is probably the most that you're gonna get out of them. Those are hard miles. It's different than a regular vehicle.
Yeah.
So things start going because they're going, from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
And a lot of cruising around. So.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk. Can you talk candidly about fat? Where can we? Are we trimming fat? Where can we?
We are pretty thin.
Because people are talking about this gazebo. I don't know the details of the issue.
That's so silly. You know what? A former mayor or former village president put up the gazebo. We've been maintaining Cook County's property. That property, it looked like garbage when we weren't maintaining it. He put up a gazebo. Apparently, didn't ask for permits or got the proper permits or whatever the situation was. I guess the county took exception to it, and so now they're charging us this fee. We're squaring this up with them. Part of it was because we neglected it. Anytime you neglect a bill, the person that you owe the money to is not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So they weren't. We're straightening all that out. And we're going to move forward with it.
Okay.
And that's it. It's really no more than that.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I'm taking away from sitting down and actually having a conversation with you is that I want people to understand is that you seem to, I guess I don't know from before, but sure. You came in here and things were a mess. I mean, or were they pretty?
I wouldn't say a mess. I think
there were definitely some challenges though and things like that. Because what I'm getting at is that you seem like there's a better handle on things. And things that people want to make arguments about aren't as significant. And it'd be like you go to a doctor and you're like, I've got all these issues, and he's like,
WebMD for the week.
Right, but you're going on in WebMD, and then he's going, wait a minute, like these aren't even your problems.
Right.
These are your problems, and you're like, I didn't even know that. And you're sitting there yelling about a bruised finger or a fracture you think you have in your ankle, and he's like, you realize your heart is failing, like, you know what I mean? Like it's just one of those, it feels, and I'm a person that kind of goes a lot on feeling and getting in front of people and talking it out. It feels like that's more of what's going on here, at least having you here.
I believe so.
Having you in the village now is you have this approach that seems to be like, look, I've identified where our issues are, we're moving things in a good direction and where we need to move them. It's hard to have people out there making arguments on Facebook that aren't necessarily our real issues, and not to have the final conclusion on this, but that it's not a make or break for what we're trying to do. There's nothing sneaky, there's nothing like demanding about this home rule thing that puts us in a situation where we feel like we have to. And I think a lot of people do feel that way, that there's some sort of thing that this has to be done, or that the village feels that way. But I mean, it is up for vote, so sure. There must be a reason for it, and that's why I asked the question, and I don't think you meant it this way, so I don't want to say like you said no, that it'll never be asked for again. But like, if we don't do it now, then we're gonna, like Frank said, we're gonna run the village the way we've been running it, and there's more important things going on.
Absolutely.
And we'll get it figured out. But if in 2 years we've done nothing but kick the can down the road, you hate to have the people that are out there saying, well, maybe we could have moved some things around the way we wanted to, and now we're saying I told you so, because now we have to ask for this again because we weren't able to take the money from the hotel motel tax and divert it to where we need it, or we're not able to do this or that.
That's one point that I forgot about the hotel motel.
Just and that, because I've heard it from these are the things that I think develop out over conversations where people can start to really see the bigger picture, instead of just the gripe that they've heard recently, or the neighbor that says, don't let them raise your taxes. I mean, there's an argument for both sides. Sure. And so I hate to just, I'm not the kind of person that likes to just pick a side and go with it. Like I said, the idea that we have to immediately, as a village, pick a side and stick with it, and that there can't be openness to the ideas. I always say, like, pretend that you were for it.
Right.
What could it do for you? What would happen if you were for it?
Right.
And then at least consider those. But it just, I'm seeing very quickly that a lot of people they have a hard time,
They have a strong bias against it because
yeah.
it's been put in their head that it's going to impact them with property taxes, and
Yeah.
and it's going to hurt them.
Yeah.
And that's all we're looking to do.
Yeah.
And like I said, we have so many other things on the plate right now.
Yeah.
Between the two TIF districts,
Yeah.
possibly moving Village Hall, getting these developments going. That's our priorities.
Yeah.
We put it on the ballot at this point in time. Again, we started talking about it. I got here in July. We started talking probably October, November about it, and realized when we had to have it on the board as a resolution in order to get it on the March 17th election. And the other thought was, hey, let's put it on the March 17th. People in November are going to be focused on the presidential election.
Yeah.
That's where their main focus is going to be, trying to figure out which way they want to go there.
Yeah.
I figured let them talk about this now. It's probably the only thing on there.
Yeah.
Give them the time and give them the opportunity to have focus on this one thing.
Yeah.
And let them decide.
Yeah.
It's not a new topic. It's been out there for years.
Can a referendum be put? Well, I mean, I guess this is a better question for the board. But can a referendum be put forward anytime?
No, only on elections.
Okay.
Only on the national elections. So in November and then in March. So the primary here and then in November.
Okay.
So and I think part of what people should really look at as far as to let them know that we're not trying to push this through or we don't have secret agendas is the length they're going to put an ordinance out there that, hey, if we do raise your taxes, we're saying we're not going to, but if we do, we're automatically doing a resolution to get rid of this referendum.
Yeah.
So I think that's very telling as to what the board really wants to do.
I think they're just concerned, and as I am, I guess, like it feels quick, and it also feels like this might be something more permanent. And a lot of people are saying that, well, that's not really an ordinance that sticks or that stands, whether you want it to or not. And I thought, well, how not so? Because it couldn't. I mean, the way I feel about government is that it should represent the people. So if we all said, even by petition, that we wanted it on the ballot, that we can pull it, do you know what I mean? Like
that is the other way to get it on the ballot.
And that's what
residents could do that.
Right. Okay. So on a soapbox a little bit, and what is driving this for me is the frustrating part is that without information, people want to drive at a certain thing and say, well, this can never be undone. Well, you're not informed about what it, and if you're not willing to step up, like I wasn't and haven't been, if you're not willing to step up and get informed and then say, okay, let's get everybody on board. I want the saddest thing for me would be to see a low voter turnout. And then the other sadder thing would be to see a voter turnout that's just going to the ballot because someone told them to. They haven't looked into the issue and don't really have and some people just don't have the political, desire or fortitude to want to care. But that would be the tough thing for me is to see people that just sort of show up because they were told to, or just sort of going in blindly or not at all. And it's weird and hypocritical to have somebody honest enough to say, I didn't even vote, and here I am saying I would hate to see low voter turnout. It's like, come on, man. But that's why I've instigated this change, and I don't want there to be a lot of pushback in what I'm trying to do. So I'm a little bit defensive with it because it's like we all have to do this together. We all have to come together and decide, okay, do we want this or don't we? What's the state of our village? And this is why I appreciate your almost an hour, 10 minutes now of talking about where we are as the state of the village. We haven't even touched on debt. I mean, real quickly, where are we in terms of debt limit? I know that's important to people.
We haven't touched it.
Yeah.
So we have, I want to say 2.9. I don't have the exact number, but that's our general obligation debt limit.
Okay.
And we don't have that outstanding. We do have some bonds, but they're alternative revenue source bonds, where we've identified a source other than property taxes to pay those bonds. So we have to levy for that debt, but we always abate it, and we've always abated that tax every year. So those alternative revenue sources have been able to pay those bonds off.
Okay.
So we're not hitting property owners for debt.
Okay. Because what is the 8.625 allowed by the state in order, is that in terms of your limit of debt to value?
Yeah.
In that sense?
For non-home loans.
Yeah. And what are you saying then? We're at zero?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so all of our other bonds, like I said, are being paid off by alternative revenue sources. We have a 1% tax, sales tax that goes directly towards our one bond issue, and then utility bonds. I believe there's um, utility revenue that goes to pay those off every year.
Okay, so I find this very interesting, and this might be, you can clarify this
And the
thought.
same thing with the MFT bond.
Okay.
We're refunding all our motor fuel tax money.
Okay.
It pays that off. So nothing from the general fund goes to pay off our debt. No property taxes are levied for our debt.
Okay. So it doesn't sound like someone could make a very good argument for us being in any kind of financial trouble, in a sense. Like,
No, we're not.
sounds like things are pretty good. I mean, if this were my personal situation, I would feel pretty good about it. I have no debt.
I mean, we have debt, but it's getting paid off by the revenue that we have coming in. We don't have to levy property taxes.
Okay,
So does that make sense to you?
so then the clarification is that the 8625 is on what is coming out of property tax and general fund?
Right.
I was getting at what is our debt situation and why, like, because the question is, well, with home rule we could have lower rates for borrowing, right? Or that's one of the benefits.
Our
But if we
credit
don't
rating is
need
better.
it, right? Like,
Our credit rating is better because basically they see that you have the ability to tax just about anything if you had to.
okay,
So that's basically why your credit rating might be a little bit better being home rule rather than not home rule. So that's really not an issue.
how much debt? I mean, how much? Like, if you're saying that it's being paid off by things that don't have to do with property taxes, how much is that? Do you feel like is there a limit on the amount of debt we can carry at all?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Okay.
Like how much debt do we have? And you say like it's being covered, but is that a sustainable situation now? And it should only improve based on moving some control that we have right now, even non-home rule. We have the ability to kind of move things, shift things a little bit better. And okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. All right. Well, good. So we talked a little bit about debt then. Good. Got that out. Anything else before we end this that you think is important for people to know regarding the state of our village?
The best thing I can say is that I think that we've got a good team and a team that's looking forward, and the past is the past, and we're looking towards the future, and we value what's going on in the past. We're learning from it, and we're just trying to move forward. And I really am excited about the opportunities that this village has. So.
Good. Yeah, and
it's an open door policy. I love the feedback.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, if we're doing something wrong, call us on it.
Yeah.
We'll try and make it right.
Yeah. Clearly that's the case. I think and then like I said, I mean, the unfortunate thing sometimes is that neighborhoods get into, we're not always so nice to each other, and that creates a situation where everybody wants to go to the village over issues, and sometimes then that means, well, ordinances about weeds and
that's not what we want.
Different things.
That's not what we want.
Yeah, like you focused on bigger issues, bigger topics, and
there's other programs we're looking to do, and we'll talk about those at the budget. But we're looking at senior programs where we have a handyman program for people who don't have the money. That we've got a subsidized handyman that can come and do small things for seniors that could help them out. The snow shoveling, the grass cutting, the putting up a ceiling fan, repairing a small thing. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be in that business necessarily.
Yeah.
But we do want to have, if we could put together trusted vendors to do that.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to support a program like that.
For
It probably wouldn't cost more than $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
In the big scheme of things, that's nothing in our budget.
Yeah.
but it could take care of their people that have been there for a long time and want to stay here
Yeah.
and be in their homes.
Yeah, but if you but if you don't want your tax dollars going to that, then step up as a neighbor. I see
Yes.
plenty of people around me
Yeah.
that deserve to have shoveling done for them, or
Sure.
things that we could step up and do for each other. And I know that's sort of this. I live in the perfect world in my head,
Yeah.
but I have to deal with the world as it is, and do more myself. And we always don't have the time or the energy or the effort, but I think it's just, at least it's something to call each other out on and say, okay, well, if you do have a complaint about where the village is spending money, maybe there are areas like that
Right.
that, well, we'd love to implement this thing, but it costs money, and if you'd rather not that we spend it, then we have to step up for each other, and then we can say, well, we're saving a lot of money because everybody's helping each other out as neighbors and
Sure.
we're working out whether or not there's nuisance weeds in the back of someone's house, or someone's left a property untended to, and
Sure.
those are the kind of things I think we could work out as neighbors, that we don't have to worry about the powers of home rule to say,
Right.
well, now we can say, well, then you're fined immediately.
Right.
And it was hilarious on the Lamont Q&A, just as an entertainment side note, that one lady stood up during the Q&A. She said, I had a house in a village that had home rule, and they told me that I had to fix up all these things. They gave me a whole list, and she said, I don't have the money for this. She said, I already have a buyer, and they'll do this. They don't care. And she said they were so adamant about that it had to be done before a sale that they said they would fine me $15,000, something crazy, a month or whatever it was. So they were sort of trying to bully her into doing this.
Sure.
So she says, you know what I did? I deeded the property to the village and stopped paying the taxes. Like, it's funny that she had that freedom to not worry about the cost of having that money, but yeah, so she deeded the house to the village and said, you fix it then, and then she stopped paying the taxes. And then it's like, well,
it's one way to get at it.
yeah, I mean, it's one way to make a statement, but I think at the end of the day, what I got from all of what I've looked at and tried to do is that the people still have a voice, and that you're at least one who's also willing to come out and say that.
Sure.
And most people that I've had on have said that we're here, we're listening, we're
Yeah.
trying to do our best to listen, and if only that, if anything, that's the start of it. And then however you feel about how quickly or how home rule is being brought up, unfortunately the budget meeting got canceled.
Yeah, and
so-
we had 3 people that would have been out, and
Yeah.
the 4th that was going to have to leave early.
Okay.
And I'd just rather have everybody's input on that.
Yeah.
I think it's very important.
Yeah. And I'm going to do my best. If I can, I can show up, and I don't really
Sure.
have that powerful of a mic, but I mean, but
Yeah.
like, again, Lamont had town halls on it, and they were videotaped and everything. I looked at YouTube. They had 380. This was in 2018, and they already voted on it. They had 384 views. So in a town of 16, 17,000 people, when you have 380 views of a YouTube video fully explaining the case behind and for home rule, and then having Q&A in a town hall, you got the people that went there, you have the people that watched that, and then you have the people who are on Facebook talking about it.
Yes.
What is that? I'm interested. What does that amount to, and how can we make an impact for that? And so that's where I think is a good place to leave it, is just in people's mind that you've sat down with me for an hour and 18 minutes, and I think that says a lot. And I think we could do more, and starting with this, and starting with each other, and encouraging us to become informed. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you
and
for
I'll let you get back to representing us and doing your job. And if you're hearing this, I'm putting it on to right now. Westchester Informed is on YouTube as well as Facebook under the name Westchester Informed, so you can like the page. You can also subscribe to the YouTube videos, because that's a great way to get notified when we post more of these. I promise they're not all going to be about home rule, but this is obviously a huge topic, and so we're sort of trying to get as much information as we can from all these people. I would have liked to, again, I said it at the beginning, I would have liked to have some fun with this and get to know these people, and that way there's some rapport where I can ask the challenging questions, but it seems as though this is the time that I have to start to ask these questions so that we can all try to become more informed right away. So I don't like the timeline any more than you do, and there's so much more in the village that we can talk about and that we can do these for between, like you said, public works, the police chief, the school board people, and then hopefully we get to a point after this home rule thing where we're having some fun with this too. So and just informing everybody about what's going on. So I appreciate you listening. I show me a podcast that's not sponsored, and I'll show you a podcast that's not going to be around very long. So I am self-sponsored right now. My company is Pravda LLC, and we are a real estate company. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home in or around the western suburbs, or you need a renovation done, that is what we do. I buy and sell homes for myself as investments, and so have a lot of good experience and knowledge with that. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you for taking the time to become an informed Westchester. And until next time.